Okay. Hi, Monica.
Hey.
Okay, my first question is your work seems very conceptual to me. Do you consider your work to be part of a certain choreography style or school of thought, or have you come up with this style on your own?
Oh my gosh. So I'm very true to the idea that no idea is a new idea. Um, there's just everything's been done. I personally think. So I don't think I came up with anything on my own. I do think I have this like lineage of people that I've pulled from. There is one choreographer in particular who I really like. Her name is Faye Driscoll, and she uses a lot of like sensory words to create choreography, and I really enjoy her work, and that's who I was inspired by to use sensory materials to also create work. But I ended up meeting her and taking class from her, and the way that she choreographs is totally different. So I ended up taking readings about her work, thinking I knew what she was doing and doing something totally differently. So I am inspired by some people, but I don't necessarily do the exact same thing as them. Did you want me to go into more of like how I choreograph,
That
or is that?
actually, that's a good follow-up question. Yes, I do want you to do that. But my next question is, I noticed in your blog you wrote that you give keywords to your dancers to see how different people interpret them differently. How does your practice link language and movements together?
Oh, yay. I love this question. Um, so I usually come with like a list of moods or movement words like lightning or static, which is my favorite word. Static's my favorite word. Um, and the dancers can then have 30 seconds to a minute. I don't give them a lot of time to think about it too much, to interpret these words with their body. And the reason static is my favorite is because I think I wrote about this in my blog. Um, Sometimes people are thinking of like white noise, um, radio static. Some people are thinking about static as stillness. So I had all these different interpretations without telling people what the word meant. But there was always a common factor between them. There was a lot of like shaking in place or shaking moving. It was like shaking, that's the common thing. So I changed the word to shaking or vibrating. From shaking and vibrating, there was waves. So then I went into water like waves. So the words change over time, but they all hold like the same lineage of meaning throughout the piece. Um, and then the words can change even over that. Like if we're creating a piece over 8 months, the meaning of something might change from the very beginning, but it is fun to have this like record of what word or words we started with and then what happens at the end. It's like a long game of dance telephone.
That's awesome. I love that. A long game of dance telephone.
Yeah.
Um, Another follow-up question to that one is, do you ever use language in your movements? Like, do you have dancers ever sing or say anything or communicate with poetry or say the words that you are using? Or do you prefer them to only communicate non-verbally with with their bodies?
Yeah, I do have speaking in my work a lot, whether it's obvious the connection between the spoken word and the movement. I don't know. In the thing I'm working on right now about memory and how like your childhood really affects your adulthood, I have people like saying out the number dates of like their birthdays, and whoever's married says their anniversary, but they'll say it like 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4 instead of 12, 13, 14, which is my anniversary. But so that those numbers, I don't know if people would like pick up that those are dates unless I said it, or maybe they do. Um, then there was another piece I did where the dancers would whisper to each other. I would be like, whisper a story. And sometimes they'd be across the room from each other trying to like hear each other speak. And so the audience members on that side of the dancer could hear her better than the other dancer could.
That's
So, but the audience members on the other side of the room were also struggling to hear. So not necessarily, it's not important to the narrative,
okay.
but it adds another layer, and then everyone walks out having a different experience of the work. And it means something different, the people that could hear her speaking than the people that didn't. And it doesn't necessarily make one person's interpretation more important than the other, just different. And I really like that idea.
It's fascinating. That's so interesting. That actually leads me to, I'm going to go out of my own order here because that leads me to another question. That you said you're interested in extending the length of your performances. Do you use any, well, first, do you have any issues with keeping the focus or attention of your viewers through extended performances? And do you use any specific techniques to draw them in or keep their attention in certain ways? Like you said, them listening to one dancer versus another, or?
Yeah, I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't think I've had a problem. I don't think I've had a problem engaging people. The shortest work I've made in the past couple of years has been 37 minutes long. And everyone who has come has received my work really positively. I'm sure I have someone that hates it out there, but I haven't had any like bad criticism. And what I think makes my work different from other durational work would be my use of lighting. So on stage, usually you have bright stage lighting. If it's dim, there's still a lot on the faces. But I really tend to like to dance in dimmer locations. Just seeing the outline of the body is really fun for me, or hearing a voice that comes from nowhere and me controlling rather than a light board controlling. But the dancers will often manipulate the lights, coming from like a flashlight or something just non-conventional is interesting to me. And then the viewer kind of has to lean in to really see what's happening and pay attention, because usually they're in the space with the dancers, and if they don't want to get hit, they have to know where the dancer is. So I think my use of lighting is helps keep attention in that way. So it's not necessarily always the movement that's also enthralling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's so interesting. So kind of going back to the use of language and auditory signals in your work. So I downloaded one of your playlists that you put on your blog, and I listened to it, and then looked at your dances that you recently put on Instagram. So do you ever have your dancers perform to music or poetry or anything auditory, or is it, well, we already went over that it's not completely silent, but, and if you don't ever have them perform to music, how do you keep them timed together? And does it matter to you if they're not timed together?
That's a lot of awesome. Oh my gosh, you're making me so happy. I've never been asked these kind of questions before. So the playlist, it's so funny because my playlists like never match with the work. Like you're like listening to like Dua Lipa is just like bass heavy and just awesome dance music, and then my work is just like slow motion. Like, where does this correlate? So my music, I just dance to what I like to dance to. It, so even if it's like club music or strings or weird, found sound, it just depends what I'm feeling, and then I just improv to it and I pull from there. So then it doesn't necessarily have to like be fast once I set it, but it helps me to just have some whatever I'm feeling in the moment, and much like you said in your studio, you got to find the right music. Like there's no, like people try to force it sometimes, I feel like, with their cool mood music, and I'm just like, I don't care anymore if people judge me for if I listen to pop culture and whatever. But again, to my dancers dancing to music, sometimes they do. If you watch Things You Do with Friends But Sweaty, which is still like probably my favorite work that I've ever set. I also have that playlist on my Spotify, and that was like an hour-long just playlist of love songs, whether they be like female to female, female to male, male to male. And it was kind of set like the story arc narrative of that piece. It was just about two women falling in love and it just being in their apartment. And if they just had music on, like if they were moving into a new house, they put on a playlist to move in, and we were just kind of seeing them live their lives through this playlist. So that was just a lot of music, a lot of different music, a lot of different artists. And then there have been times where it's set to like rain noises, like a thunderstorm. So two different, very different ends of the spectrum. And that leads me into keeping time. So I specifically told my two dancers in Things You Do with Friends not to keep time with the music, like that it did not matter, because it was more just mood music, like I said, for people to chill to. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of stillness in that piece. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you're like listening to a song and you know when the bass is going to drop, I didn't want them to move when the bass dropped. I thought that was too obvious. So I'd almost tell them to like wait for the bass to drop, wait a couple seconds, then move if it's coming up. And I also had like two extra songs on the end of the playlist in case they went longer than usual. And we had things to do if they went over time. Because it was always different, because the timing does not matter to me. There are very, very few unison sections in my work. And if there is, it's all based on like watching each other. So I'm like, when you see her leg go, then you do your arm. And there's a lot of like the breath work as cues and breathing together. We do a lot of breathing exercises. And often, like if you watch my piece, there's like a breath cadence in it, which I love the breathography. And that keeps them on a steady pace, even if there's no togetherness in the work. Yeah, and if one person is off, let's say, in the span of like a 30-minute work for like 1 minute, if that changes the whole premise of my 30-minute work, I feel like I've done something wrong. So if someone's off, like I think that that's going to make a different feeling to the piece, a different vibe. And I like that. Okay. I'm not too precious about anything. And that really bothers some people.
Well, it adds a certain amount of like improvisation, and that's what I was getting at in terms of that's part of your concept. That's part of your idea. It's part of your style. So I think that's really interesting, and it makes for very unique, interesting work.
I love when people see my work and have totally different interpretations of it. Again, I don't work with narrative, but I love when people bring their own narrative. I love hearing what they think. But no matter what the narrative, if the mood they're feeling is similar, I think that's my goal, is to create a mood or bring out a certain type of memory from people. I know it's not going to be the same, because how can I like own an experience so much that I can touch that exact experience in everyone? You know, we're all different. Absolutely. So as long as a memory comes up that has a certain like anxiety or happiness or longing associated with it, like I've won.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I love that. So my final question for you is, this has been great, by the way. And
I feel the same way. I'm loving it.
So because of the current pandemic and temporary closure of venues and mass gatherings, how are you taking into consideration the importance of documentation instead of live performance?
Every time you ask a question, my eyes just go.
And how has it changed from what you previously thought about documenting your work?
Yeah, so I'm kicking myself in the ass right now because I didn't document my work.
Okay.
like until it was a final product.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have no record of what I had worked on for 6 months, except that one video I've been sharing of the two girls in the dark. That's all I have. And I took the video because I thought it was so cool. But we had, 20 minutes of choreography set, and that's 6 minutes of it. Because, you just take it for granted. You're like, are you guys going to remember this next week? Yep. Okay, good. We'll see you next week. And that was the last time we saw each other. So now I am filming everything I do. Like if I'm improvising, I'm filming it. If people are taking class in my yard, I just started like outdoor classes, I'm filming it. Because if somebody does something I want to remember, I want it on video. So I'm becoming a lot more precious about my time with people, and just the movement we do is always being researched, and my movement always being researched. And then as far as documenting like the final product, like I said, I like when people have different views of the work. So for me, just like setting a camera down and recording it from the front is really losing something for me. And so a lot of teachers I brought this up to them in my GSS class, and they've all brought up like, why don't you make a sound score over it? Like, why don't you create the sound score? And I was like, well, still everyone's hearing the same thing. And they're like, well, why don't you just try something new? And I'm like, oh, I feel like this is becoming who I am as a person. Like, this is what makes my work. And this is a signature I don't want to lose out on. So I do want to, think about making sound scores and experiment. That's why I'm in this program. I want to learn new things, but how can I also maybe bring that experience online? Whether it's I have to film 15 different views of this work and whoever RSVPs gets a different link. And then getting a better camera so those views look a little more clear. My phone, not the best while running around in a circle. And then, or maybe losing the preciousness of everyone having to have something different. Because even filming it from the front, I feel like everyone would still notice something different just watching it once through. Maybe giving some instructions on how to watch it, like watch this in complete darkness. Or watch this while running your sync so they get some sort of different auditory experience. But then there's always someone that's just, you don't have the time, you get the video in the middle of the day, and then you're like, well, I'm not going to watch this at night. So it's just a lot of contemplating how to continue my work and show it. Then of course there's always the monetary value of things and how much do you want to show online for free and yada yada yada. But yeah, I think I'm in a crossroads with wanting to video more and not wanting to put too much on video on the internet. Yeah.
I think you have a very unique problem there, but also a universal problem, because I worry about the same thing on Instagram, for example. I don't want to give away too much of my process or too much of my work, although it's completely different because people don't come to pay to see my work. But I understand that anxiety and that worry. And
yeah.
it's a tough, there's no clear answer in the age of technology and social media.
Right. And it seems like sometimes you just want to be like, I don't want social media. Like it's too much. There's no no way to have it like an air of mystery around your work. I sound so strange, but then you can't, because that's really a marketing strategy and a way to get your name in the world. So it's just this double-edged sword of not wanting to be on the internet and having to be on the internet.
Right.
Because the first thing you and I did was stalk each other's Instagrams.
Exactly. I know. But if it's any consolation, it has made me want to see your work in person, because I think you can tell by the really active and engaged nature of all of the different dancers that or performers, that it would just be so different in person.
It
So
is some like, if you couldn't see it in the video, but like talking about the engagement of performers, and they are so committed to my work. I love them. Like my yard, we did this in my yard, this recent work, covered, like, I don't know where the bugs came from, but that night that we filmed, there was just bugs everywhere. And I wanted two dancers standing extremely still for the first, like, counting down from 100. And in real life, you could see like mosquitoes just all over their face. And they were just standing there holding hands, staring at each other. One girl said she had 22 bug bites on her face. So like the commitment level to not like swipe at these bugs, because I would have. I'm lucky to have people in my life that are like, she wants me still for 2 minutes. I'm not gonna breathe. Like,
oh my gosh. Oh, well, that's awesome. I mean, sucks that they got bug bites, but that's awesome that they're so committed and that you work with such great people.
yeah, I love them.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions and being so candid with me. I think this was very interesting and informative about your work.
Yeah, thank you so much. These were awesome questions. I did not expect any of them at all. I don't know what I was expecting, but they were great.
Great. Awesome. All right. I'm going to stop recording now.